It is 8:20 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time. It's the 14th day of July, 2026, and this is episode 1351 of Bitcoin And with me, your host, David Bennett. I'm going to be reading to you all the news that you can use about Bitcoin and macro from around the world to get you centered on what the hell's going on with Bitcoin today. And I read the articles so that you have a chance to disagree with any commentary that I have, because otherwise I would just be saying, hey, here's the main headlines for the day, and here's what I think about them. And honestly, that just kind of is disingenuous, because at that point, you're really only getting what I posit there. Whereas if I read you the entire article, you get to decide all that shit for yourself. Today, we're going to be talking about this United States government move of $288 million worth of seized Bitcoin and shitcoin number one to Coinbase Prime. I'm sure that's sending jitters and shockwaves through all of the crypto bros who think, oh my God, the government's going to sell. Probably not. Maybe they finally figured out who the hell has the keys to all this seized Bitcoin, and they're, for whatever reason, deciding that they want a third party to custody it, and they're choosing Coinbase, which is not a good choice. Next up, the White House crypto advisor is going to take leave right before they try to vote for the last time this session on the Clarity Act. I'm not exactly sure what anybody was thinking with this leave approval, but honestly, I don't think it's the best idea for the White House crypto advisor to be hightailing it at this time. The European Central Bank has picked a whole shitload of payment providers to test their digital shitcoin, digital euro, ahead of the 2027 pilot. That'll be fun. June CPI fell, and we're going to talk about that when we run the numbers in the middle of the show. Then picking it back up in the second half, we are going to start out with Her Majesty's, revenue and, revenue and customs over in the UK is going to start treating Bitcoin loans a little differently as it concerns tax consequences. And lo and behold, and I was shocked, it actually seems like it's good news, which again, I'm shocked that gambling is going on here. Bolivia, well, they might be adding Tether to their national payment system. We'll find out. Protesters are getting really, really, really pissed off about AI, and now they're marching around in a circle and carrying signs. And of course, you know how I feel about that. I'm sure it will change the world by carrying signs and saying slogans like, what do we want? Something. When do we want it? Fuck if I know. Grok Build. Grok Build and Git repositories. Breaking news is going to be the last up for the day. But before we get into any of that, literally, before we get into any of that, I want to say a few words about wealth. Let me see if I can find it again. I had it. I swear to God, I had it. It was right here. Here it is. Okay. So Contra on Nostr wrote the following. Real luxury isn't a watch or a car anymore. It's a clear head, a full night of sleep, a slow morning, and a quiet house. Everything about modern life is built to take those away from you. You don't need money for any of it. You need to turn things off and mean it. And I respect the sentiment. And I know that there's going to be people out there going, you idiot, a car costs money and you got to have one to be able to get around. I know, I get that part. And that whole quiet house, yeah, you got to have money to get a house. I get that. I get some of these basic parts, but it's the extension of what we've been told wealth is that I think has caused all of the problems that we see today. And here's what I mean by that. I wrote back to Contra and I said, I continue to ask the question, what is wealth? The only sure answer I have so far is that wealth sure as shit is not what they told you it was. The 401k didn't exist before 1978. Let that sink in. Health insurance as a for-profit enterprise didn't exist before 1973. Let that sink in. All the fiat money is fake. You know that. Fake money inflates stock markets. It's bullshit all the way down. I have tried to tell certain people in my life, like meat space, these ideas. Sometimes I'm met with kind of, genuine curiosity, but more often than not, I'm either met with a blank stare or an argument as to how wrong that is. And here's the messaging. Even people that I deeply respect, other content creators, and I'm not going to name names because it's not important, but people that I deeply respect will sit there and they'll talk about how much money that that you need for your 401k. Well, what did you need for your 401k in 1977 before they existed? And by the way, unless you had a union job, there really wasn't a lot of pensions. There was a lot more pensions than there are today, but it was definitely not a guarantee. Yeah, people would vie for positions to be able to get jobs that would offer a pension, of course. But even pensions themselves, relatively new product. It was a relatively new product. And yeah, I mean, it's like, and I'm talking about like, was there pensions in 1880? And were people dying under bridges in droves because they were poor as fuck? No, not really. Were they dying for, lack of health insurance? No, not really. In fact, the United States, with its health insurance plan, has become pretty much, I think, either the sickest nation on the planet, and if not, at least one of the top 5. So tell me again how having a job with health insurance is really helping us out. And breaking out of that mold is almost impossible because of all the messaging. Again, I go back to a lot of the people that I have deep respect for basically parroting the messaging. Like how many times can you get on X or listen to CNBC and not have somebody talk about how much you need in your 401k by the time you retire at 65? And if you're listening to that bullshit at 35, the landscape is going to be completely different by the time you're 65. So can you really depend on that? And I'm not saying go cash in your 401k. I'm also not saying if you have an employer that is giving you a 401k, not to, if you can, you might as well maximize it because you're paying into it anyway. And this whole notion of Social Security from the FDR administration back in after the Depression. Well, that shit's fucking bankrupt because it was a Ponzi scheme. So you can't depend on that. So what is wealth? Is it really watches and Lambos and McMansions? Or is it a quiet house that has enough room between you and your neighbor that you can grow a garden? And you're not in a homeowners association. So if you want a red door, by God, paint your door red. I am discovering a deeper and deeper respect for what I used to laugh at, like people like the Amish. When I was a teenager, I would laugh at them. The notion of not using technology, which is false. I come to find out that's false. And the notion that they wouldn't talk to outsiders, that's false. The notion that they wouldn't engage in any kind of aspect of modern society, false. The notion that they would only sell to each other, false. No, they just have a completely different view of wealth. Family is wealth. Land that is productive is wealth. Animals upon that land is where they also store value. They have a completely different view of wealth. I fear that what we've been told wealth is so deep of a lie that it has critically wounded Western humanity for all time. And only a very few people are going to be able to have the cojones to break out of that shit and think differently. And again, I'm not saying go cash in your 401k if you already have one. It's just this fear mongering of, do you have enough? Will the money run out before you die? Is that really the way we should be living? I think not. Let's get into today's stories. The United States government moves $288 million in seized Bitcoin and Ether to Coinbase Prime. Oh my God, we're all going to die. The United States government just staged its seized crypto for an exchange, and it took an extra hop to get there. Wallets tied to the government moved about $288 million in seized Bitcoin and, God forbid, Ether onto Coinbase Prime over roughly half of a day yesterday, which was Monday. Blockchain data from Arkham shows. The Ether went direct, but the Bitcoin, oh my God, it took a detour through intermediary wallets first. The movement is despite an executive order in March of 2025 by President Donald Trump, which designated seized Bitcoin for the country's strategic Bitcoin reserve and said that it should not be sold. Okay, I want to come back to the way that that's worded because that's bullshit the way they're doing this. Oh, by the way, this is CoinDesk. A government wallet tied to Ryan Faros, the Xanax Man case. I don't know. Xanax Man? Yeah, Xanax Man case. And I don't know what that is. So, if you're clueless, so am I. A government wallet tied to Ryan Faros, the Xanax Man case, sent 2,875 Bitcoin worth roughly $178 million to a new address, which forwarded the full amount to a Coinbase Prime deposit wallet minutes later. The second wallet, linked to defunct exchange BTCE, sent 925 Bitcoin worth $57 million through the same pattern in from the seizure address straight out to Coinbase Prime. Both intermediary wallets were emptied out. Is there anything else? Yeah, there we go. The Ether skipped the middle step. A wallet connected to Brian Cruson, the Oracle employee named in the $45 million laundering scheme, sent 30,000 ETH worth $53 million directly to a Coinbase Prime deposit address. Meanwhile, a separate 140 Bitcoin moved between government Coinbase Prime addresses and a Coinbase cold wallet, showing on both the inflow and outflow side in a move that is indicative of internal shuffling. As such, routing the Faros and BTCE coins onto an exchange doesn't confirm a sale, since Coinbase Prime also handles custody, financing, and staging. Still, exchange movements are widely considered to be transfers in preparation of a sale or exchange to other assets such as stablecoins, as large holdings of crypto are usually held on cold wallets instead of exchanges for security reasons. Really? Why don't we go talk to Saylor about that? The wallet or wallets still hold roughly $20.6 billion worth, including 324,500 Bitcoin, 28,394 ETH, and 145.5 million USDT. So this batch is a rounding error against the overall pile. Yeah, it just sounds like they're consolidating the Bitcoin. And they're consolidating it on Coinbase Prime. This is not, there's no evidence, they say it in the piece, but there's no evidence that they're planning for a sale. And if they did, it would violate Trump's executive order. And I'm kind of sure that Trump would be none too happy about it, unless it was he himself who directed this particular set of movements. But I want to get back up to this language up here. I'm going to reread this sentence. The movements are despite an executive order in March 2025 by President Donald Trump, which designated seized Bitcoin for the country's strategic Bitcoin reserve and said it should not be sold. The movements are despite. That's where I've got my real problem, because it infers that something dastardly may be occurring, that we should be frightened, that we should be scared. And this is the kind of garbage bullshit writing that I hate. I can't stand it. There is no proof of any intent. And I've given this example on several occasions. I'm going to give it again. One of the best university professors and overall teachers that I've ever had the pleasure of experiencing a class from, his name is Dr. Michael Deeney. He's a biology professor at Texas Tech University. The guy was hard fucking core about teaching biology. His class was one of the hardest classes I've ever taken in my entire life. And it was literally freshman biology. I mean, yeah, freshman, you'd think you'd get a pass. No, not with this dude. And if you survived his class, let me put it to you this way. Like 1301, well, actually it'd be 1303 biology was the first semester of freshman biology, and 1304 was the second semester. So you had like two separate semesters. The first semester, you couldn't get a seat in one of the largest classroom auditoriums that there was, and this thing sat like 500 people. Now, I'm not lying. It was a huge auditorium. That was the first semester. By the end of the first semester, it wasn't standing room only any longer. Most people had a seat. By the start of the second semester, half of those seats were empty. That's how hardcore he was. And he used to say something, and it's always stuck with me. In science, you never ask why. You only ask how. And I apply that damn near to every single thing that I see, touch, feel, taste, do, think, whatever. I'd never ask why anymore, because I don't know. The answer could very well because Jesus wants it that way. And I don't know if that's true or false. It's the how that matters. What actually happened? Stop assigning possibilities or possible intents. And for God's sakes, Coinbase, stop actually giving time and writing what you think. Even inferring what the intent might be is classless. Stop it. Now on to this one. White House crypto advisor Patrick Witt to take military leave. Felix out of Cointelegraph is writing this one. And he says, Patrick Witt, the White House's point man on the Digital Asset Market Clarity Act, is taking a leave of absence at the end of July for several months of military training, Crypto in America reported. Witt, who has served as the executive director of the President's Council of Advisors for Digital Assets since August, is expected to wrap up his work on July 24th before reporting for Judge Advocate General training with the Georgia Army National Guard. The training will qualify him to serve as a legal officer in the National Guard. Quote, Patrick has always been forthcoming and honest with every stakeholder that he was taking military leave later this month, said Cody Carborn, CEO of Digital Chamber, on Tuesday. The move comes as the Clarity Act, which would create the first comprehensive U.S. regulatory framework for the crypto market, faces a narrow window to pass the Senate before lawmakers begin the August 8th recess, which many see as a critical deadline for the bill. Good God. The timing of this is making me question everything. Witt has been instrumental in advancing negotiations between the crypto and banking industry representatives over certain aspects of the market structure bill, including stablecoin yield and disputes over the ethics provisions, or lack thereof. In Witt's absence, the President's Council of Advisors for Digital Assets Deputy Director, Harry Young, is expected to take on his responsibilities, though Witt intends to remain involved in the process during his military training, according to sources who spoke with Crypto in America. Why is this the first time that we're hearing about it if he's been so forthcoming? And I'm sure he has been forthcoming, except nobody's reporting on it, like at all. And why would the point man on the Clarity Act think it's a good idea to not postpone his military training, which I'm sure he could get a deferment from by, I don't know, executive order from the president? You should say, hey, look, I got to wait until we figure out this Clarity Act shit, and then I'll come do Judge Advocate General training with the National Guard. But no, the lead guy, one of the lead dudes of the Clarity Act himself is not going to be around for the last breath, the last ditch attempt that we have to get the Clarity Act through. And I'm not saying I want the Clarity Act. I'm just saying if all these people, like even Trump is yelling on Twitter, he wants the Clarity Act to be passed. Well, is it the best idea that your point man running this whole show, or one of the people running this whole show, is just going to up and leave right before we have this last ditch attempt? I don't think so. So what the hell's going on there? That's my question. However, what I find interesting, and I just saw this, I had to pause there to take a text message. I just saw this. Clarity Act gains second law enforcement endorsement before Senate push. And this was published yesterday on the 13th. The Digital Asset Market Clarity Act secured its second public endorsement from a major U.S. law enforcement organization. The Federal Law Enforcement Officers Association said it submitted a letter to the Senate Banking Committee endorsing the Clarity Act. So this is odd because we had seen a whole bunch of it was like a officers union and clearly the banking lobby. They're all over the Clarity Act in negative ways. This is the first time that I've heard that there's a law enforcement agency that is actually endorsing the Clarity Act. So we'll see if that helps the Clarity Act people out. But I want to get onto this one. The ECB picks 36 payment providers to test digital euro ahead of 2027 pilot program. Helen Parts is writing for Cointelegraph. The European Central Bank is moving the digital euro from planning to testing, with dozens of payment companies joining the next stage of the project. There are dozens of us. The ECB selected 36 payment service providers to participate in a digital euro pilot. The list of selected PSPs includes fintechs Stripe and Revolut, alongside traditional banks including Deutsche Bank, UniCredit, and BPCE. Revolut has recently adjusted some cryptocurrency services for EU users by phasing out support for Tether USDT. The pilot comes as governments can take different approaches to digital currencies. While Europe is expanding testing of its proposed central bank digital currency, the U.S. has moved to block the Federal Reserve from issuing any kind of CBDC. It's because we have stablecoins. The ECB began selecting providers from across the euro area for its digital euro pilot earlier this year, with the 12-month trial set to begin in the second half of 2027. Central Bank said that it received more than 50 applications from payment companies after opening a call for interest in March of 2026. The selected participants include traditional banks and payment processors, as well as non-bank service providers. Italy has the largest number of selected participants, with 7 companies joining the pilot, including UniCredit, Poste Italiane, Nexi Payments, Banca Sella, Banca Morte di Paschi di Siena, Isi Bank, and Numia. Germany follows with 5 selected providers, while Portugal and Greece each have 3. The ECB said the mix of countries is designed to create a broad testing environment with selected providers able to offer pilot services outside their home markets. ECB Executive Board member Piero Cipollone, who chairs the high-level task force on digital euro, said the level of participation shows private sector interest in helping develop it, adding that the central bank expects deeper cooperation with payment providers during the pilot. Quote, "We look forward to deeper engagement as we work with and learn alongside European payment service providers in developing a secure and efficient and inclusive digital euro," he said. The pilot will involve the ECB and the central banks of 19 bloc members, including Belgium, Germany, France, Italy, Spain, and the Netherlands, alongside payment companies and merchants testing the system before any potential token issuance. Selected providers will have different responsibilities during the trial, with some focused on supporting user access to beta digital euro services. Okay, so the ECB has got 36 lapdogs from across the rest of the EU to join in their progeneration of, well, what is going to end up being surveillance coin for the European Union. And it's not going to work. As I've said it before, you're too late. You're too late. The only thing that you can do is try to get people to stop taking Tether. You notice how they only look at getting rid of Tether. I don't see a whole lot of people getting rid of Circle, even though I know Circle is represented in the EU. So that kind of bugs me. Circle is a company that's led by Jeremy Allaire, as one of the leaders, and he is on the wrong side of the block size wars of 2015 through 2017. He signed his name to the New York Agreement. He is a scumbag of epic proportions. And it looks to me like Tether is going to be turned into a black sheep. They've got the edge right now, and if Paolo Ardoino doesn't do something to keep that edge, Circle's going to overtake Tether. And I would rather not that. I'd rather not see that. I don't like stable coins, but if I've got to have if I got to have a dog in the hunt, I'd rather have Paolo from Tether as that dog, because he's actually been a really good Bitcoiner for years, even though, yes, I know he's one of the guys behind Tether. I get that. Which would you rather have? Somebody who's a solid Bitcoiner, or Jeremy Allaire, who not only did he sign his name to the New York Agreement, Circle back in the day famously dropped Bitcoin altogether in favor of just servicing shitcoins. Which one do you want? Because stablecoin is not going away. I'd rather have Paolo. Anyway, Bitcoin beans, proof of cacao. Circle P is open for business. Circle P is where I bring plebs just like you with goods and services to plebs just like you who want to buy said goods and services. But you will be buying it in Bitcoin, because if you're not selling it in Bitcoin, you're not in the Circle P. Today's Circle P vendor of the day is Bitcoin Beans. Invest in your health like you invest in Bitcoin. Cacao, also known as chocolate, is a nutrient-dense superfood. Did you know that? Did you know that chocolate only becomes candy when you combine it with a 5-pound bag of sugar? Yeah, that's not what this chocolate is. This is pure 100% pure cacao. It's a superfood. It's rich in magnesium, antioxidants, and theobromine for natural energy and mood support. They craft 1-pound blocks of 100% pure cacao, which is grown regeneratively in Colombia and paid for in Bitcoin. No chemicals, no fiat, no middlemen, just real food sourced with integrity and exchanged through proof of work. I want you to use Bitcoin and as the coupon code at bitcoinbeans.com. That's bitcoinbeans.com. Use code Bitcoin and to receive a 5% discount on everything you buy. Yes, he sent me a brick of his chocolate. Dude, I'm telling you, this is the best chocolate I've ever had in my entire life. If you really, really just want to have sweet chocolate, then get a block of this, shave a whole bunch off, put it in a double boiler, add your 5-pound bag of sugar, and then let it cool down, and lo and behold, you've got candy. Congratulations, you've turned food into candy through the simple addition of a shit ton of sugar. Don't do that. If you actually want to taste what chocolate tastes like, what God intended it to be, go to bitcoinbeans.co. That's bitcoinbeans.co. If I said com before, forget that. It's not bitcoinbeans.com. It's bitcoinbeans.co. That's .co. bitcoinbeans.co. Proof of cacao. Yes, you're going to be able to buy it in Bitcoin because that's what they take. Make sure you use Bitcoin and as the coupon code to receive a 5% discount. Let's run the numbers. The numbers are in, and the United States June Consumer Price Index fell 0.4%. Likely cooling move toward Fed rate hikes. We can hope that it cools the move toward Fed rate hikes, because the minute that the Fed hikes the rates, risk assets are going to tumble, because that's the way it always happens. This is out of CoinDesk. Let's get the skinny on the numbers. U.S. inflation in June came in far softer than it was forecast, likely putting a hold on what were fast rising expectations for an imminent Federal Reserve rate hike. Let me pause right there. There was media that was suggesting that there was fast rising expectations for an imminent hike. That was never going to be the case. The Fed their hands and ankles are tied together. They're almost hogtied at this point. If they were to try to raise rates, the interest on the national debt is really high. It gets to the point where the math already doesn't work. You and me both know that. The Fed is unable to move at this point. They could move lower, and then they'll print money, and then inflation is going to, have a problem anyway. But if they raise the rates, all of a sudden they got to figure out where they're going to get the money to pay the interest payments on the debt. And that's for those who wonder. And I keep hearing this question asked all the time, and believe me, I used to ask this question a lot. Now I finally get it. Who owns all this debt? France is in debt. To who? United States is in debt. To who? All these countries, they're all flashing that they're in debt. And a good question to ask is, well, who are you in debt to? Good question. The answer is anybody who holds that country's treasury bonds, whether it's retail, institutional, corporate, whatever. It's whoever bought France's treasury bonds. It's whoever bought the United States treasury bonds. That's who owns the debt. That could be spaced out across 172 different countries. Like, all these countries hold everybody else's debt. That's why all this is bullshit all the way down. And that's one of the reasons why the math for all of this stuff, global economics, doesn't work anymore. But if you want to know who holds the debt, that's who holds the debt. Anybody who bought treasury bonds from any country's central bank. That's the way that works. Okay, so the consumer price index declines 0.4% in June versus economists' forecast for a decline of only 0.1% and May's sharp rise of 0.5%. On a year-over-year basis, CPI was up 3.5% versus forecast of 3.8% and 4.2% in May. Core CPI, which excludes food and energy, was flat in June versus forecast of a rise of 0.2% and May's actual 0.2% increase. On a year-over-year basis, core CPI rose 2.6% against expectations for 2.8 and 2.9% in May. And then they talk about Bitcoin's price, which we'll get to later. But those are the numbers that came in 7 a.m. my time this morning. The Fed has some runway to not do anything. So that's the point that I want to get to. They're not going to raise rates. But these numbers don't suggest that they're going to decrease the federal fund rate either. And they're not going to. That's my call. They are not going to reduce rates. And the person that was all over, Powell's ass, Jerome Powell, for not lowering the Fed rate, even though he couldn't unilaterally do that, and neither can Warsh. He was all over Powell's ass about he's not decreasing the federal funds rate. Well, Warsh isn't going to either. But now it's a different tune that Trump is singing. Warsh is a great guy. We've got the right guy there. Yeah, well, he's pretty much doing the exact same thing that Powell was doing, and he actually talks in a more hawkish tone. And yet everything's fine now. See, well, you just hate Trump. No, I don't. This is any politician. It doesn't matter, blue, red, green, purple. I don't care. The story has changed, and I don't like it when people's stories change. All right, from CNBC, futures and commodities, Brent North Sea is up 2.4% to $85.35. West Texas Intermediate is up 1.8% to just under $80 a barrel. Natural gas is up a quarter to $2.90 per thousand cubic feet, and gasoline is up almost 2%. Back to $3.22 a gallon you go. Murban crude is up 3.6%, topping $81 a barrel. And interestingly enough, metals are also all in the green today and by wide margins, which is generally not true when all of energy is in the green. Palladium is up 4.17%. Gold is up 1.69%. Platinum is up 1.8%. Silver is up 2% to $59.13 an ounce, and copper is up 1.6%. And by the way, gold, $4,072.9 an ounce. So why are energy and metals both up? Because of the inflation numbers. The inflation numbers made risky assets a little bit safer to hold. Because people are going to start saying, "Oh, well, they're going to decrease rates." No, they're not. No, they're not. But it's better than a hike, which they weren't going to do anyway. But yeah, it makes it actually even less likely that they're going to hike. Ag is pretty much in the red today. Biggest winner is coffee. Coffee, 1.39% to the upside. Biggest loser today is chocolate, 0.72% to the downside. Live cattle is down 1.25%. Lean hogs down 0.8%. Feeder cattle down 1.52%. This is probably because gas prices and oil prices are up, which means shipping live animals to slaughter is going to be more expensive. So that's probably what that is. Indices are mostly up, not by a lot though. S&P is up 0.14%. NASDAQ is up almost 1%. But the Dow is retreated by a quarter of a point while the S&P mini is up 1/3. And then there's Bitcoin, which is chilling out at, $64,780. That's a $1.3 trillion market cap. And we can now purchase 15.9 ounces of our favorite shiny metal rock with our one Bitcoin, of which there are 20,056,126.14 of. Average fees per block are 0.02 BTC taken in fees on a per block basis. It's about 45 blocks carrying 102,000 unconfirmed transactions waiting to clear at high priority rates of 2 sats per VByte. Low priority gets you in at 0.6. We have gone back above 900 exahashes per second. We're at 911. 911 exahashes per second. That's the security of the Bitcoin blockchain, and as usual, I remain unconcerned. Reminder, bitcoinandshow.com, bitcoinandshow.com. Hey, yesterday I got somebody that signed up to the website for $50 a year. I thank you so much for doing that. I appreciate that. It helps my mental state. Let's just put it that way. Anyway, that's bitcoinandshow.com. If you think I'm giving you value and you want to show value back and you just don't really want to jack with it, and you just like, hey, I'll just pay you with fiat. That's fine. It's all going to get converted to Bitcoin anyway. Bitcoinandshow.com. You can either do you can get it for free, or you can get it for $5 a month, or you can get it for $50 a year. Your choice at bitcoinandshow.com. If you think I'm giving you value and you want to show that value back, you can do it at bitcoinandshow.com. From No Forking Consensus. Yesterday's episode of Bitcoin and Jub with 1,123 sats says, much obliged. LNPC with 777 sats says, cheers. Ooh, it's a Petra Boost. And if you don't know what a Petra Boost is, I'm not going to tell you. Jason High with 250 sats says, thanks for the show. You're welcome. Nick Dose with 242 sats says, cheers. Cheers right back at you. That's the weather report. Welcome to part 2 of the news that you can use. UK HMRC adopts no gain, no loss tax treatment for crypto lending, as well as liquidity pools. Naga Avan Namoyo writing for The Block. Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs will treat certain disposals involving crypto asset loans and liquidity pools as a no gain, no loss, deferring capital gains tax until a user makes an economic disposal of the underlying cryptocurrency. The measure, published yesterday, takes effect April the 6th, 2027, and applies to individuals and trustees entering crypto asset loan and liquidity pool arrangements, according to the policy paper from the UK government. The rules cover 3 different scenarios: an acquisition or disposal of an interest in a single crypto asset lending arrangement in exchange for crypto assets of the same type as those invested will be treated on a no gain, no loss basis. Interesting. Borrowing arrangements will treat borrowed crypto assets as acquired at market value at the time of borrowing, with any collateral disregarded for CGT purposes. For automated market-making arrangements, liquidity pools operated through smart contracts, a user acquiring an interest in exchange for the same type of crypto asset is taxed on a no gain, no loss basis. Upon exit, the treatment holds to the extent that the user receives the same quantity originally invested. Any difference between what was invested and what is received triggers a gain or loss based on that difference. HMRC said the change allows tax treatment more closely with the economics of these arrangements, recognizing gains and losses only when a participant makes an economic disposal. The measure addresses problems arising from HMRC's very own 2022 guidance. Indeed, stakeholders had flagged that the earlier interpretation produced disproportionate administrative burdens, the tax authority said. A call for evidence ran from July to August 2022, followed by a consultation between the 27th of April and the 22nd of June 2023. The Block reported on that 2023 consultation, which sought to align tax with economic substance by not treating crypto used in DeFi lending and liquidity pool arrangements as a taxable disposal. HMRC published a summary of responses at Budget 2025 and set out its approach at that time. This week's measure is expected to affect 700,000 individuals who engage in crypto asset loan and liquidity pool transactions, according to the paper. HMRC said users will benefit from an easier to understand framework, and the current UK tax regime treats crypto as an investment asset, with selling, swapping, or spending constituting an actual disposal for ZGT at 18% for basic rate and 24% for higher rate taxpayers. This new treatment modifies that disposal treatment for certain lending and liquidity pool arrangements. Per the notice, final costing will be subject to scrutiny by the Office for Budget Responsibility and set out at a future fiscal event. HMRC said the measure is not expected to have any significant macroeconomic impact. Oh, bullshit. Yes, it will. The measure amends the capital gains tax law for individuals and trustees under the Taxation of Chargeable Gains Act 1992. I think it will make a macroeconomic impact. By the way, that's the end of the article. But being able to be very secure in understanding and knowing that there are rules that will not get you into a taxable event if you use your Bitcoin to take a loan or dispose of crypto assets for some kind of like-kind crypto asset. It's an interesting situation. Again, I find myself genuinely surprised that the United Kingdom took this path, because generally speaking, governments don't really want to give any individuals any way out of paying their taxes. So I'm genuinely surprised. On to Bolivia, who is considering adding Tether's USDT stablecoin to a national payments system. Logan Hitchcock, writing for Decrypt.co. Bolivia's economy is stabilizing, and now it is investigating the potential inclusion of Tether, the dollar-backed stablecoin USDT, as a form of payment in the nation, according to a local news report. The report stems from a Friday briefing from Bolivia's Minister of Economy, Jose Gabriel Espinosa Yanez, who highlighted the care that must be taken as part of the assessment. Quote, remember that Bolivia is on the Financial Action Task Force gray list, yet another consequence of the problems they left us with in the past, and these crypto assets must be carefully evaluated, he said in a press conference. Quote, we are working on regulations to govern their use for those who have adopted them, in many cases out of necessity, and know how to use them properly, he added. The FATF lists, FATF, black and gray, identify nations that have deficiencies in their ability to counter money laundering and terrorist financing. On the gray list, Bolivia is under increased monitoring by the FATF, but is deemed to be committed to resolving the issues quickly. Quote, the Bolivian economy today is considerably different from what we found 8 months ago, said Espinosa Yanez in a statement. Quote, the measures we implemented are part of a plan designed before we took office, and the results are beginning to validate that approach. End quote. The South American nation removed a block on crypto transactions in 2024, helping to fuel explosive crypto growth in Latin America, which recorded almost $1.5 trillion in transactions over a 3-year period ending June 2025. During the period from July 2024 to June 2025, the nation ranked 8th among its Latin American peers with $14.8 billion in transactions, outpacing Ecuador and Puerto Rico in the process. In October 2024, one of the nation's biggest banks, Banco Bisa, kickstarted its crypto custody services, allowing its own members to store and transfer USDT, but no other crypto assets. Quote, USDT is more and more used as a cornerstone within several emerging market economies, Tether CEO Paulo Ardoino posted on X, following news reports about Bolivia's consideration. The leading stablecoin by market cap, USDT, ranks 3rd among all crypto assets with a market capitalization of more than $184 billion. All right, let's look at this a little closer. And what was I saying about Tether and Circle in one of the last stories that we were talking about? I'd rather have Paulo Ardoino of Tether, who has basically demonstrated himself as a pretty good Bitcoiner, against Jeremy Allaire of Circle any fucking day of the week. And twice on Sunday, I might add. I've said that in Europe, we see more and more, well, for lack of a better term, delisting of Tether and not delisting of Circle. So the Circle is completely regulated by the United States Treasury and the SEC and the CFTC and all the finance bros in the United States regulatory financial circles. Right? So they are completely captured. 100%. And I think that Circle is going to be the stable coin du jour of Europe, not Tether. And that's fine by me. I think that Tether has already and is going to continue to eat all of the market in Latin America first. Latin America is ripe for Tether. And Tether exists in Latin America. Hell, they're down in I think their headquarters are in El Salvador. So they're right in the middle of the mix, man. They're right at the ass end of Central America. That's going to give them access to all of South America, all of Central America, and into Mexico. Now, Mexico, there's going to be a battle between Circle and Tether in Mexico because Mexico is really tied to the United States in more ways than a lot of people might want to think. But the rest of Latin America, not the case. And I think that Paulo Ardoino is going to really do himself well if he concentrates on sewing up the Latin American market. Again, this is not me saying stablecoins are great. I'd rather that they didn't exist, but they were always going to exist. Tether's been around since like 2014, right? I mean, that's even before, Tether's been around before I even got into Bitcoin. That's how old Tether is. It's not going away. Still, with the regulatory filth that's formed around Circle, it's going to, and the fact that it's completely captured, it is the perfect missile to send in to destroy what's left of Europe by the United States finance bros. Because I've talked about that before. Not only is it a way for the United States to print money in ways we never thought possible before and export that to all the other countries in the world, it is also carrying with it the payload that has the capacity to destroy what's left of the European Union economy, which is not in good shape as it is. And we know that several people in the United States are not, and I'm talking about in the government, talking about not only this administration, but even in the Biden administration, there were several people that were high up that, really were like, fuck the EU. And we saw, well, I won't get into it, but we damn near destroyed the treasury bonds all across the EU when we did some finagling with our own bond rates in, well, I can't remember what it was. It was something like a repo issue or something, and we made an adjustment, and it damn near collapsed the UK gilt, but it also caused all kinds of problems in the EU itself. I think Circle is going to be the death of what's left of the EU economy, and to literally change it into a dollarized system. Latin America is going to be dollarized anyway, and a lot of it already is. But Tether isn't so captured by the United States Regulatory Authority. They have a version of Tether that they've said, okay, well, we'll do all the regulations for the US, and I can't remember what they call it, but it's a version of Tether that is allowed in the United States because it meets all the regulatory compliance. But regular Tether kind of doesn't. And I think it would be better for Latin America to adopt Tether rather than Circle, because I get the feeling that Tether is culturally more aware of how Latin America works than Circle is. Circle is definitely in the catbird seat when it comes to Europe because that's all westernized bullshit. So, that's the analysis. That's kind of what I see is going to start happening over the next few years. Now, into AI, because why not? It's not like AI is going away either. This is all the shit that you might want to know. Protesters march on OpenAI, Anthropic, and Google DeepMind, demanding an AI development pause. Yeah, right. Jason Nelson, Decrypt.co. Protesters again took to the streets of San Francisco, marching between the offices of OpenAI, Anthropic, and Google, calling for a pause of AI development. Saturday's demonstration, organized by Stop the AI Race, went beyond AI safety to include concerns over job losses, the environmental impact of AI, rising housing costs in San Francisco, and the growing influence of major technology companies, the tech bros. Organized by former AI researcher himself, Michael Trozzi, the march called on leading AI companies to stop training new frontier AI models while keeping existing systems available. Protesters urged companies to redirect research toward AI safety and alignment until stronger safeguards are in place, while some demonstrators called for stronger local and state regulations, because of course they did. Trozzi said the group's goals have shifted since its first protest in March. Quote, I think earlier this year I wasn't thinking about raising political salience as much as I was thinking about convincing CEOs. Quote, I think I've updated toward CEOs actually listening, given the multiple blog posts and some exchanges I've had with one of them. I also think having protest is useful to show that people care, end quote. Yeah, right, really? Okay, well, the demonstration follows an earlier Stop the AI Race protest in March, when roughly 200 people marched between the offices of Anthropic, OpenAI, and XAI to call for a coordinated pause on frontier AI development. And since then, the group has continued to campaign through protest and public advocacy. Trozzi said he was encouraged by the support the movement had attracted since then. Quote, I was pleasantly surprised to have the NUHW, that's the National Union of Healthcare Workers, endorse the protest and repost it on their social media. I was also surprised by how quickly other groups in the Bay Area like AI Action were able to get up to speed and work with us. I'm also very grateful to Quit GTP for their help organizing this, end quote. And OpenAI, Anthropic, and Google didn't say shit about it because they didn't respond to a request for comment. Let's just say it that way. The organizers plan to continue advocating for an international pause on frontier development while encouraging lawmakers to adopt stronger oversight. The protest comes as concerns over AI safety continue to draw scrutiny. Yes, we know, and then they go into some background for a couple of paragraphs, and then it closes. That's all we really need to know. And by the way, what's not in this article is that the earlier march in March was 200 people. How many people were marching this time? 200 people. There are dozens of us, absolute dozens of us, and they're going to stop the AI by carrying signs, holding bullhorns, and walking around in a cycle. It's freaking ridiculous. They're not stopping this. You know, like, in fact, at 200 people, not even, there's the office workers at Anthropic were probably not even looking out the window at it. If there was like 50,000, now that's something to gawk at, but 200? Nah, you send them donuts. They ain't going to do shit. But we're not done with AI just yet. Grok Build uploaded entire Git repositories to XAI storage, not just files it read. Wow, the hackernews.com bringing it to you. XAI's Grok Build coding CLI was uploading entire Git repositories, full commit history and all, to a Google Cloud storage bucket run by XAI, not just the files a coding task actually needed. A researcher publishing as Seralab, testing version 0.2.93, captured one of those uploads, cloned the Git bundle out of the intercepted request, and pulled back a file the agent had been told in plain terms not to open. The upload rode a separate channel from the model itself, and the byte split is hard to argue with. On a 12 gigabyte repository of files the model never read, model turned traffic to v1/responses came to about 192 kilobytes, while the storage channel to v1/storage moved 5.1 gigabytes, a roughly 27,800x gap between what the model needed and what actually left the machine. The storage upload ran as 73 chunks of about 75 megabytes, every one returning HTTP 200, and across the researcher sweep side, the volume tracked the total repo size. Honestly, that's all we really need from this. So what does it mean if you don't know? So people were saying, look, here, hey, Clanker, I need help with this little bit of code. So here's the repository, and what I need you to do is go to this one file and read it and help me look at this code that's in this one file, not anything else in the repository, just this one little bit of code. This 512 kilobyte chunk of code, it's all you need to help me with. Is there a bug in it? Is there a syntax error? Help me, help me, help me. So what does Grok do? Uploads the entirety of the Git repository for that project. And it's never coming back. Grok is literally sweeping GitHub for everything. Now, the question really becomes, will it sweep things that you don't initiate? Like, is it literally just like thumbing through all the repositories, whether a developer wanted it to or asked for help or not, and pulling all the files? That I don't know. But a lot of people have been talking about this since yesterday, and honestly, it's quite disturbing because that is a lot of intellectual property to be leaving your GitHub repository. And yes, I understand. Microsoft owns GitHub. They probably copied it anyway. Still, this is not a good look for Elon Musk and X and Grok and all XAI and all that shit. Because it looks to me like Grok is basically stealing. That's what it looks like. Now, here's the thing, is that Grok and XAI and Elon Musk have been silent about this. Now, maybe they'll make a statement sometime today. Maybe while I'm recording the show, they already have. But as of this morning, they ain't said nothing about Grok basically just ripping developers' code and libraries and README files and everything in a Git repository off. Like I said, man, the optics are bad. The optics are not good. Okay, we come to the end of yet another episode of Bitcoin. And like I said, go to bitcoinandshow.com if you want to show some love. Sign up for $5 a month. Just say, hey, I find value in what you do because you're the one that sits down in the morning with a cup of coffee and leafs through all of the bullshit headlines to find any smattering of actual, signal that we can get instead of wading through all the noise. And you read it to us. And I appreciate that because I'm on my way to work. I don't have time to not only curate all this stuff and find what's good and what's crap, but I get to listen to you read it to me, and I can make my own judgments about what it is that I heard, and I can compare it with what you think was said. And sometimes we agree and sometimes we disagree, but at least I know what the hell's going on today because you did that for me. If you find that valuable, and you want to support the show, go to bitcoinandshow.com. That's bitcoinandshow.com. There's a couple of tiers. There's a free tier, and you'll get everything. There's a $5 a month tier, you get everything. There's a $50 a year tier, you'll get everything. Everybody gets all the stuff. The tiers are only for you to show support, to give real, actual support to some of us content creators that, for whatever reason, have just chosen this because it just seems like the right thing to do. Echoing, God forbid, Barack Obama. That's bitcoinandshow.com, bitcoinandshow.com. Go over there, throw me some cash, and I'll see you on the other side.
This has been Bitcoin and I'm your host, David Bennett. I hope you enjoyed today's episode and hope to see you again real soon. Have a great day.